What's up guys, it's Storm here. Obviously you saw the title and you could probably tell this video is different from all my previous ones. It's still power scaling themed, but it's more of a discussion video as opposed to me just talking about a versus matchup or how strong I think an individual character is. All the way back from Whole Cake Island, there's been this sort of narrative in the community of a power cliff surrounding our main character Monkey D. Luffy that I just flat out just disagree with. This video is just me describing my thoughts on the matter and why I disagree overall. It all starts from the Luffy versus Katakuri fight in Whole Cake, so that's where I'll begin. I'm not going to info dump about every single thought that I have about this fight because I'm currently working on the Katakuri related video, so I'm only going to do the main points. Luffy enters the fight with Katakuri and is shown time and time again that Luffy is inferior to Katakuri while in his base, his Gear 2 form, or using Gear 3. Katakuri himself even says he's faster and stronger than Luffy at this point. Luffy goes into Gear 4 later in the fight and is able to land hits on Katakuri due to his future sight being disrupted. Once Katakuri regains his future sight, it's shown that he's superior to even Gear 4 Luffy combat-wise. Once Luffy returns to fight Katakuri again to truly surpass him and learn future sight, we get into the first misconception. Luffy is gradually learning future sight while getting pummeled by Katakuri. Even Katakuri starts to remark on Luffy and frequently seeing the same future that he does. Flambe then interferes by blowing a dart at Luffy, which lets Katakuri land a fatal blow on him. After Katakuri and Luffy blast everyone in the mirror world with Conqueror's Haki, he says he no longer believes Luffy is inferior to him. Now, most power scales interpret this as Katakuri saying base Luffy is equal to Katakuri, and he outscales his previous Gear 4, which is where we reach my first disagreement. Now, I'm not going to give a whole narrative essay about Katakuri's character, but it's important to understand him in order to know what this not inferior statement actually means. Katakuri his whole life has built this persona that he's an invincible perfect man who has never once laid down on his back while also hiding his mouth from even his own family. The reason for this is due to a younger Katakuri seeing his sister Brûlé injured due to bullies that Katakuri previously beat up for laughing at him. He wanted to not only become a perfect man that showed no weakness to everyone, but also something that people would fear so nothing like this would ever happen again. This facade he put up to protect his siblings is in direct contrast with someone like Luffy, who lives his life freely and will do whatever he wants while completely unapologetically being himself. Although Katakuri shows his mochi is superior to Luffy's rubber initially in the fight, rubber will stretch and form its shape, while mochi will stay molded into whatever shape you turn it into, which perfectly represents these two characters. After seeing Luffy push this ideology against his and this fight, Katakuri sees Luffy as a chance to see which path is actually correct, which is why Katakuri injures himself. Not only because it is honorable and it's the right thing to do, but in order to see who was right in their beliefs, their fight needs to actually be fair. So when Katakuri says, "I no longer see you as inferior to me," he is saying he now respects Luffy's willpower, determination, and his beliefs about how he lives his life. Also, if you want a shorter version as to why this isn't a reference to actual strength, this base future sight Luffy proceeds to get bodied by Katakuri, while Katakuri can also fight a later Snake Man Luffy toe-to-toe, if not better, considering how he's able to dodge all of his attacks and stuff. Base future sight Luffy only landed one hit on Katakuri, and wasn't even shown to be greater than Gear 4 Luffy, which is shown to not only have greater arm and haki than Katakuri, but also is capable of blowing him away with his Kong gun. The only thing you can argue is that his precognition is an advantage that he would have over his previous Gear 4 self, but it isn't enough to say he surpasses Gear 4 against Katakuri. The next time something like this is brought up is during Wano and is easily worse than the Whole Cake Island supposed power cliff due to the other scaling implications people draw from it. The most important character in this new supposed cliff is one of the Flying Six named Ulti. Now, I like Ulti. She has a dinosaur fruit, which is actually really cool. I find her dynamic with her brother enjoyable and funny, and I really like her design. But she single-handedly is probably the most overrated character I've seen in the One Piece story. I've heard things like she can beat characters like Doflamingo and Katakuri, which is ridiculous based on what she's actually accomplished in the story. She has a short skirmish with Luffy during the Onigashima raid, where she clashes with Luffy using her ulti mortar. Even though Luffy sees it coming, which is likely his future sight, he decides to take her head on, which results in him being overpowered and sending him flying into the ground. Luffy then gets up and comments he guesses he underestimated Ulti before he blitzes her even though she sensed him with her observation haki. Ulti also has this little snap reaction effect in the manga while Luffy charged at her in base, but she still couldn't react and was thrown away by a base Luffy. Page 1 then enters the fight and tries to bite Luffy, which he easily dodges and counters him with an elephant gun. While dealing with Page 1, Full Zone Ulti grabs Luffy while he was off guard and is about to headbutt him. In the anime, she actually damages base Luffy and is able to casually tank one of his attacks, but in the manga, Luffy just remarks that her power is too strong and he tries to go Gear 4. Now, in terms of raw strength in her full zone form, it is way easier to argue that she's strong enough to overpower base Luffy to where he can't get out of her grip. Keep in mind that Luffy was off guard when she grabbed him, and it was a difficult hold for him to get out of for this reason. We also know Luffy hadn't used his advanced armament attacks on her due to him not really attacking her directly in the manga, as well as Yamato shortly after this declaring that she knew Luffy had been holding back more of his power, which is why she trusted he was the one Kozuki Oden was waiting for, as well as Ace's brother. So not only was Luffy holding back due to it being implied he was saving his power for Kaido, but Yamato also says it after having a skirmish with him. Ulti doesn't really have any significant scaling to Luffy, but I'll go over the reasoning others used to upscale Ulti and this post-Udon training Luffy. We have to go all the way back to the beginning of the arc. Luffy, during his initial fight with Kaido, was blitzed and one-shotted by a base Kaido Thunder Bagua. Then during chapter 1001, a base Luffy is capable of barely dodging the same Thunder Bagua, which leads people to think this post-Udon training Luffy is somehow superior to the Gear 4 in chapter 923 and all of his base stats. Ulti, through this logic, would scale to this base Luffy and be over other characters that Gear 4 Luffy from chapter 923 would be stronger than, such as Doflamingo or Katakuri. The problem with this is 1. Luffy couldn't use his future sight during his fight with Kaido and Curry, and 2. Luffy dodging the Thunder Bagua wouldn't even make him better than the 923 Luffy in all stats. The reason Luffy couldn't use future sight and Curry is due to his emotions running rampant at the time. He already thought Kaido could have possibly killed his crew, but then he finds out from Speed that Kaido had attacked her and Otama. For all Luffy knew, his crew and Otama were dead at the time, and the enemy who did all of that was standing right in front of him. Luffy then goes into a rage and attacks Kaido. Luffy's eyes are even more pronounced throughout this whole entire extra action, so this Luffy wasn't at his best. Post-Udon training Luffy, where he does all the physical activity and advanced hockey practice, is indeed stronger than before, but nothing outright proves he is stronger than his Gear 4 self, even in Whole Cake Island. The Straw Hats do grow from extremely difficult battles from island to island, but nothing proves that Luffy has transcended people like Katakuri in his base during the Udon section of Wano. As I said before, Ulti doesn't even probably scale to a full power base raid Luffy, except maybe in raw physical strength or durability. When it comes to damaging Kaido with his Red Rock later in the arc, we know that Luffy is using durability negation with his advanced hockey, so it wouldn't necessarily scale to his actual physical strength. That's most of the rant I wanted to have, but I also just wanted to confirm that there is actually a cliff within Wano during the rooftop section. It started a new meta for scaling certain powerful characters in the story. When Luffy acquired Conqueror's Infusion, it actually cliffed him, unlike all the other instances I mentioned. Despite his Gear 4 Rio attacks only doing shallow damage to Kaido, his base Conqueror's Infusion or coding attacks was able to deal significant damage even when it was crude and clumsy. This rooftop meta was an example of an actual huge power cliff for the story. I do want to say, it is possible for future cliffs to happen in this story, like when Luffy ends up fighting people like Akainu or Emu or Blackbeard. They could completely topple all of his previous challenges and make him tiers of power stronger than before. I'm just saying that these previous cliffs people are talking about aren't really as concrete as people say them to be. With all of that said, I got all my disagreements, but I'm curious to know all of your thoughts on what I said. It's pretty wild to hear people say stuff like Usopp beats Katakuri or Doflamingo from doing no damage to page 1. So that's why I made this video. If you enjoyed my little rant, I appreciate if you liked and subscribed. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. See you guys next time.